everybody. So welcome back from lunch. Like Matt just mentioned, Mihaela and I are going to go a little bit deeper into some of the new features in Grafana 11. So we're going to spend a little bit less time talking about some of the headline stuff that already came up in previous talks, like Explore metrics, Explore logs, alerting, AI, and app platform improvements, and sort of get right into the heart of some of the more detailed features. So I'm Mitch Seaman, like Matt mentioned, and I'm the product director for Grafana. That means that if you have a feature request that you've been waiting on for years and it's not yet in Grafana, you finally have somebody to blame. And I'm joined by Mihaela, who's an engineering director for dashboards, data visualizations, and Explore, which means that if your feature did get into Grafana, it's probably her team that put it together. So this one's going to be pretty action-packed, and we're really excited to show you probably more demos per minute than any other talk in the day. So very high level, just before we get into the demos. What we've been up to this year can kind of be divided into three categories for three different types of people who participate in the Grafana community. The first one is the biggest group, and this is monitoring. So we've remained just as focused as ever on Grafana's main focus, which is to help you to explore, visualize, and alert on data no matter where that data lives. So it's just as important today as it was 11 years ago, and as I'm learning today, it's just as important for space agencies around the world or around the solar system as it is for the companies who operate the software that's running in your pocket right now. So second, and a smaller but much more, say, high leverage group is the people who manage Grafana instances that tens or hundreds or thousands of other teams use. And I think that's a lot of people here in this room. So the scale that we're talking about is potentially massive, and platform observability teams, or people that run Grafana for other users, are really our partners in offering great observability services for the people who are doing that sort of first use case. And third, we're focused on helping developers, members of the community, to extend Grafana. And here we're going to be talking not just about data sources and visualizations, but also about applications as a new way that you can extend Grafana to do things that you could never do before. So let's get started with monitoring and troubleshooting. Mihaela, you ready?
Yes. So Mitch challenged me to make this very interesting for you and go straight into demo time, because I wasn't stressed enough presenting to such a large room. It's very interesting to see everyone's migrated upwards. I hope that's to see us better, not to hear less from us, but So let's go straight into it. So earlier in the keynote, Torkel and Cyril introduced us to Explore metrics and Explore logs, which is our way to enhance your troubleshooting experience on Prometheus and Loki. We're very excited for those experiences to evolve, but we're equally curious to keep investing in Explore as our advanced troubleshooting tool for the big tent. So you'll usually use Explore when you're trying to troubleshoot. Let's say you have an incident and you're trying to pick at every thread that your data tells you about, so you can try and find out what's going wrong. So let's try and mimic that. I'm going to pretend, obviously, I've preloaded some information here just to make it easier, lower the risk a bit. So here I'm using the Explore page with mixed data sources to load a bunch of different types of telemetry signals. So I'm loading some metrics from my Prometheus data source, and while we're at it, you can actually use the Query Advisor to help you on your way. So if you have an idea of what you're looking for, you can actually use it, but it can also help you. It can also help you start with a query if you're like, I don't even know where to go first. So it's there to help you, and this is one of the AI features you might hear about. But let's move on. Let's say I also want to look through my logs, and I'll talk to you about that in a bit. I want to look through some traces as well. And here, hopefully, you can see that we're now using the Tempo search via powered by TraceQL. So we've now improved the experience so much that we've removed the old search tab, and we now default to this one, which is a very simple point-and-click way to search through what you need. And let's say I also want to look through some profiles via Pyroscope. But now, I've got so much on my screen. How am I going to jump from one thing to another? Well, the feature that I wanted to show you today is Content Outline, and it's meant to help you with exactly that, right? So I've loaded a ton of data. I'm like, how do I look through it? Well, now you can jump to the relevant parts to help you, hopefully, troubleshoot more easily in Explore. Now, I said I'll talk to you about logs. So we actually have a new table view for logs that you can see here. So you can control what fields you see in the view. You can sort, as you'd expect. And you can equally filter for value by pressing this icon here. So what this actually does is it goes and it changes the query for you. You don't have to manually go and do anything. Now, let's move on to another area of Explore. So last year, we introduced to you the concept of correlations. This was our way to help you link your different telemetry signals, maybe representing the same system. So again, it can help you in troubleshooting. Well, we weren't quite proud of the experience at the time. I mean, yes, it's a very difficult thing to set up, but we set a challenge to make it better for you. So I'm going to show that to you right now. So over here, I just loaded up the commits from the open source Grafana repo. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to more easily go from these commits and see some information related to the build data for that commit. And I'm going to create a correlation to help me with that. So I'm going to go to add correlation. I know I want to link on the ID, because that's probably how I refer to it in my other data source. I'm going to copy this ID field, because I know that's what I need. I'm going to find the right data source, so I know I have some build information in this one. I'm going to use the TraceQL search, because it really does make things easier. Filter by the right field. There you go. Save it. Ta-da! So I now have links, and clicking on them, I get trace information related to the build for that commit. Isn't that awesome? Wasn't that much easier than it used to be? So with this, basically, you know, earlier when I was showing you multiple queries in Explore, if you set up your correlations, you don't need to do any of that, right? So you can open up your, I don't know, logs, and you want to go to other related telemetry signals, you'll just point and click and go through to the right information. So correlations should help you do all of that much easier. But yes, there's a secret to it. So yes, of course, you need to know your system, know a bit about your data sources, and equally, you need to have admin rights on your environment. What that means, though, is once the person with admin rights that also knows the system sets them up, they are there and available for everyone else of every role to use them. And that's the beauty of it. Like, you shouldn't have to set them up that often. Once they're there, though, it's awesome. Magic. Now, moving on from Explore, so I've talked to you about troubleshooting, but I also wanted to talk to you about some visualizations and dashboarding improvements as well. So going to the dashboard view, I'll first say you might notice some slight changes, and we've also made some considerable performance improvements for those of you that have loads of dashboards. There isn't that much on this instance, but we have some really crazy instances internally, and it gets very hard to go through them. Equally, so this view now will maintain state. So if you expand certain folders and you go out and then you come back in, it will maintain the state without any negative performance implications. And I wanted to specifically mention to you that this part of the demo is all in Play Grafana org. The intention of this is to invite you all to go ahead and try it out. So in here, I also want to mention to you that subfolders is now officially GA. So whether you use your subfolders to organize your loads of dashboards, or you want to set up granular permissions, they are there now for you to use. Let's go to our Grafana 11 dashboard. There's a lot to talk through here. I'm not going to talk to you about absolutely everything. I want you to pique your interest, so then you can look into them as well. The first visualization that I wanted to mention is the XY chart. So hopefully, you all know that an XY chart helps you plot data on 2 dimensions, X and Y, and it helps you identify relationships between numerical values. And if you were using the XY chart before in Grafana, can you prove it? Because it wasn't officially supported, but it is now. So we obviously support multiple modes, and you can go and have a look more into it in the documentation as well. There's more in here that you can look through as well, but I want to jump to tooltips. So we've been doing a lot of work in standardizing our tooltips, and that results in benefits for the users as well. So over here, you'll see that I have a lot. So now what we have in tooltips is color indicators. The content is scrollable if you're crazy like me and you want to look at them all at once. You can click and copy the information from a tooltip. And you can also add annotations straight from here. You don't have to go anywhere else. Additionally, I also wanted to mention to you that we have a new Y zoom. So on most of our visualizations, you can do an X zoom. But now we have a new Y zoom. So if you shift and select down, it will zoom on the Y axis as well. This is done in the front end. Double click, and you come back. Now let's talk about the Canvas panel. Mitch was telling me some of you love it, some of you don't, but you have choices there, so use whatever you like. So Canvas was officially GA'd in Grafana 10, so almost a year ago. But we've kept our investment in this because there were so many more use cases that we wanted to cover. So now we officially support universal data links in most of the Canvas components, which is what you can see here. And more excitedly, now we support bidirectional data flow between the Canvas panel. So what I can actually do now is, with the use of the button component that you can see here on the right, so I'm monitoring this server is currently on standby. And let's hope this works, because it is a live demo. But by clicking the Start button, I've actually started the server. This is not fake, I promise you. There is a server running somewhere. I pressed the button, it actually started it. I did not fake this. So what you can do now is you're not just monitoring your system, mapping it out to see how the data is flowing, but you can instigate actions from Grafana itself. You don't have to change tabs, you don't have to change systems, anything. You can actually do it from here. Isn't that awesome? And then we've also invested a lot in our flowcharting capabilities. So now, hopefully, you can see everything you'd expect in a flowcharting tool. Different types of components, snap and align, and a lot of control over how you edit these components. And before I move on from the Canvas panel, I wanted to talk to you about one more interesting thing. So I've got this panel here, and I want to change the title and the description of it. I'm not great at naming things. Naming is just hard. But thanks to our AI Copilot, Grafana can do it for you. Isn't that helpful? Imagine you're setting up a dashboard with loads of panels. Just set it up. AI sorts out the title and description for it. Awesome. And like I said, for me, it's actually better than me. And now, last but not least, transformations. So again, I expect many of you already use transformations, so they help you manipulate the data that your query returns. You can use them to rename fields or just run mathematical calculations on the data itself, but things can get very complicated, right? So with that in mind, we've actually made some changes. We have some brand new illustrations for transformations with the purpose of hopefully explaining better what that transformation is meant to do without you having to read a lot of documentation. On top of this, you will notice that some transformations are de-emphasized, and that is to highlight that the transformation isn't applicable to the data that I have available in the panel right now. And this little information box also tells you why. So in case you expected to use this transformation, but for some reason you can't, you know how to change your data to make it work. While I'm here, let me also tell you that we have additional transformations help within the tool itself. So you can, what I did here, if you missed it, I just pressed on this eye icon here, and it opens up some documentation about that specific transformation right in Grafana. Again, you don't have to swap and go to our documentation to see some information about it. So I hope this encourages more people to use transformations, and we're really looking forward to your feedback, really. And on top of all this, we've actually added some new transformations as well. So we added a way for you to format date and time, if you like the US format. I don't understand it, really. You can filter by value, so you can create some template variables to then filter in the front end your data. It's really dynamic and cool. We have a new tabular join, which basically works like your SQL outer join, and much, much more that you can discover yourself. And before I move on from here, I actually wanted to briefly talk to you about alerting as well. Let's find a good alert to look at. There you go. So hopefully, for those of you that are using alerting already, you'll notice that this view has changed considerably. So we've done a complete redesign. We now have, at the top, some valuable metadata. You can also have like links to useful dashboards or a link to your runbook, maybe. And the rest of the content is actually split into multiple tabs, again, to hopefully make the experience easier. You no longer have to scroll through a very long page to get to the part you're interested in. Everything is hopefully better organized for you. So you can here see the query that's being used for the alert and also some related visualizations to help you understand it. And you get some history and details to help you with debugging as well. And you can always jump into Explore if you want to as well. And a similar thing you'll see in other pages as well. So like here, the contact points, again, the information is split into multiple tabs. And you can see some very useful information about the integrations you've set up as well. Now I'm going to go back to the slides. So with the improvements in alerting in this last year, we're now confident to say that new Grafana alerting is superior. So legacy alerting is officially end of life. We've announced this in advance, so again, I hope it doesn't take anyone by surprise. The new Grafana alerting system is much more powerful and flexible. You can create alerts based on complex queries, configure multiple integrations for your notifications, and set up sophisticated alerting rules and much, much more. But you'll hear more about this in the alerting talk tomorrow, so please go and watch it. Now, I've showed you improvements in Explore and visualizations, but you might be like, hey, the thing that I use Grafana most is for monitoring, so what about dashboards? Well, we've been working a lot in that area as well. So last year, in the keynote, actually, we announced Scenes as our new dashboards architecture. And at the time, it was powering our latest dashboarding app plugins. And it's done awesome. Like, we've had some great feedback, and it helped us spin up new app plugins much faster. We've since been investing in rewriting our core dashboards experience with the Scenes framework, and we're almost ready to make the switch. In Grafana 11, users with viewer role will now be using dashboards via the Scenes library. As a user, you shouldn't see any major differences, and if you do, we might be in trouble, so please raise an issue. The Scenes library will enable a much more dynamic dashboarding experience, and this migration is the first step in harnessing those new capabilities. So speaking of new capabilities, as for editing your dashboards, with Grafana 11, you'll be able to preview a new edit mode for dashboards. So this helps you compartmentalize between editing and viewing a dashboard. So in order to edit, you will enter the edit mode, which you can see here, and you have various menu options. And once you're done, you save it, you're back into view mode. You'll see much more improvements in this space very, very soon. And another feature that I pretty much wanted to leak to all of you is our Slack integration. So it's not quite ready yet, but almost there, because obviously I have a screenshot of it. This will enable you to visualize a snapshot of your panel or dashboard in Slack when you share a Grafana link. So now I'm going to pass over to Mitch to talk to us about managing and extending Grafana.
All right, let's get into it. So I love all the new dashboard and data visualization improvements, but I have to admit, with my past as the product manager for Auth, I really have a soft spot for the operators who manage Grafana for other people. So I really nerd out about RBAC and Auth features, and I actually have a whole bunch of exciting ones to talk to you about. So like I said, if you're here, probably you're not just a user of Grafana. You probably manage Grafana for other people. And that makes you basically a partner to the Grafana team and people who contribute to Grafana because you're operating the system that other people use. So here's what we've done to help. All right, so first up, we've added a brand new UI for single sign-on configuration. One of the first things that you do when you set up Grafana is to configure SSO so that other users can log in. This used to only be possible in Grafana's INI configuration files, which is okay. It works if you're provisioning a lot of instances, but it's a little bit tedious to set up if you're doing it if you're self-managing Grafana, and it's impossible to set up in Grafana Cloud. You had to open up a support ticket. So you have access to all the same information, including TeamSync in SSO, and access right now to SAML and OAuth providers. And LDAP is going to be supported pretty soon. So this doesn't replace the INI configuration option. It just augments it with something that's a little simpler, and you get a nice feedback loop with error handling, descriptions of the fields, and things like that. Also in permissions, we continue to work down our big list of Grafana resources that support role-based access control. So we've added RBAC support for library panels and for a lot of new alerting resources. A lot of people have been requesting RBAC for alert silences, contact points, notification policies. So we've gone a long way to making alerting fully RBAC compatible. All right. Next up is finer-grained auth for data sources. So still in authorization, but in a really interesting use case that I think is going to be valuable for a lot of Loki users specifically. So Grafana allows users to access some very sensitive data, in this case logs. Logs can contain personally identifiable information. They can contain customer names or other sensitive data that you don't want everybody to see. But our traditional way of managing access to that data is the data source. So you'd configure one data source with one set of credentials, and then anybody, including these teams I've configured, who can query that data source can query anything with that set of credentials. And this leaves you with a bit of conundrum if you have a lot of different access policies for your logs. You can either set up a whole bunch of data sources and configure your dashboards in a special way so that people select the data source and then that filters what they're looking at. Or you can allow everyone access to some somewhat sensitive data. So you have to make this difficult choice between security and convenience. So with Loki now, you get to have both. So I have these three teams, the checkout, platform, and security teams, who can all query this Loki data source. But I've qualified the permissions for a couple of those teams. So the checkout team can only access logs with the checkout namespace or the payment namespace. And the platform team can access any logs except for those from the security namespace or with a high security level. If I want to add a new team, it's the same as what I did before. So I can add an alerting team, and then I can qualify their permissions with an arbitrary set of labels. In this case, I'm limiting them to the alerting CD namespace. So hopefully this makes it much easier to decide who can access what logs and still have that very convenient experience in Explorer and dashboards. In Azure Monitor, we've gone even a step further. If you use Azure Monitor or Azure services in general, you've probably already set up all of your users' permissions there. So rather than recreating those permissions in Grafana, either using data sources or even more granular permissions, we've just made it possible to use the current user's credentials when running queries. So you remember back here, we had configured the Azure AD OAuth provider, and now in Azure Monitor, I can just forward that user's credentials along with all their queries. So two users could look at the same dashboard with the same data source, and they'd see just the logs that they're supposed to see. Just in case you're wondering how we still evaluate alerts or perform other background actions for this data source, there's a set of fallback credentials as well, which we call fallback service credentials. The last thing I wanted to show you is something we've been working on. I'm really excited to give you a sneak peek. It's probably going to drop somewhere in like Grafana 11.1. But this is tooling to migrate from an open source or enterprise instance to Grafana Cloud Stack. So a lot of you are probably managing hybrid setups, or you might have considered that it could be more convenient to move over to Grafana Cloud as opposed to managing a Grafana instance on your own. But you might have thought, well, that's impossible because I'm querying a bunch of network secured data sources or things that are not accessible from the public internet. Or you might have thought that it's just a pain because you have a bunch of users, dashboards, and data sources that are sitting in your on-prem instance, and it's just not worth the bother to migrate. So we've been working on both of those. So what I've got here is a local Grafana. It's running in a Docker container alongside a Prometheus and a Node exporter. and those are monitoring my, my Mac itself, so making it really obvious that I bought way too much computer for a product manager. But I've got a bunch of dashboards in here. I've got my Mac OS overview, a weather monitor, and all kinds of nice stuff. But I can't share this dashboard with any of you. I couldn't share it with anybody to access over the internet because it's running on localhost. And also, this is only as reliable as my MacBook. Obviously, I need to put it somewhere. Grafana Cloud seems like it would be a convenient place to put it. So I set up a Grafana Cloud stack, and one of the first things I notice is a new option to migrate to Grafana Cloud. Grafana Cloud, so this gives me some simple instructions. I can generate a migration token. See a mirrored setup here in my open source instance. Try out that token. And what's happened in the background is my open source instance is now connected to my Grafana Cloud stack. I have one deceptively simple looking button. When I click upload everything, all of my data sources and dashboards, and that is data sources along with their encrypted credentials, just migrated to cloud. This was one of the annoying things about cloud migrations before, is that you have to migrate data sources one by one and go and find their credentials again, like look up that password or regenerate an API key. So this is quite a lot more convenient. So in Grafana Cloud, I head to my dashboards page, and I can see all of my information. So I can see my weather overview, and then I click into my Mac OS overview, but this one is broken. This is broken because, like I mentioned, this Prometheus is also running on localhost. So how can I access that network-secured data source? Now, obviously, I could start sending my metrics to Grafana Cloud Metrics, but if I don't want to do that, that's where Private Data Source Connect comes in. Private Data Source Connect lets me establish an SSH connection between an agent that I deploy on my local network and my Grafana Cloud stack, so that Grafana Cloud stack and nobody else on the internet can access my private data sources. So in this case, I'm doing it on my local computer, and I could just as easily do this on my local network, running on a Raspberry Pi. But this also works for huge deployments. We have customers, in some of the biggest banks in the world, for example, who are using Private Data Source Connect as well. So the instructions work for Kubernetes, Docker, or I can deploy using the binary. In this case, just for expediency, I've deployed the agent here alongside my other infra. I can test the agent connection, see it's connected. Then on my data source, I see the option for this Prometheus data source to connect using that Mitch's laptop connection. And when I test it, now from Grafana Cloud, I can access all that local data. Let's get back to some other details. So when it comes to upgrading, for everybody who is still managing Grafana themselves, what we really want for every user is to get vetted, reliable features to you as fast as possible, and to make upgrades themselves smooth and simple. So the 11.0 preview release goes out today, but if you use Grafana Cloud, probably you've already seen some of these features. That's because for the better part of a year now, we've been releasing every feature in waves. And we start in Grafana Cloud in the fast channel and then sort of move on, eventually getting to an open source release. The benefit of that is that we gain more confidence in the security, reliability, and performance of every new feature as it goes out, and everybody gets better reliability and quicker access to features as a result. This has also led to some nice side innovations. Like this is the What's New in Grafana Cloud page. You can visit this to see all the new features we're releasing as they go out instead of waiting for an on-prem release. Next up, I have to inform you that we're saying happy trails to AngularJS. So we've been doing this for a long time and preparing for AngularJS removal for a while. What's happening in Grafana 11 is that Angular is turned off by default. In Grafana 12, we're going to completely remove the code. What you should do in this release is basically upgrade your plugins and migrate off of plugins that are still using AngularJS. There's some really good instructions on grafana.com and our docs. I also want to thank all the plugin developers who have upgraded their plugins from Angular to React. Angular is an old library. It's no longer supported, and therefore it's a security risk. Great. OK, so last but not least, and I'll breeze through this section, is GrafanaCon is for a community of contributors as well as users. So there are just a couple more highlights into how we're turning this from a dashboard tool. Grafana is no longer just a dashboard tool. It's a platform for observability applications. So App Platform, it's the next stage of Grafana's big tent. And that's the idea that Grafana should be interoperable with other tools and extensible. The Big Tent is growing. We have a bunch of new data sources this year, like PagerDuty, Sumo Logic, DynamoDB, SurrealDB, MonetDB. There are a lot of DBs. But there's a third way to extend Grafana, which is apps. It's been possible to create app plugins in Grafana for a long time, but they've been relatively isolated from the rest of Grafana. It's sort of like a standalone web app that you can open from Grafana's nav. So we have a lot of developers, including employees, maybe some who participated in hackathons, Jonathan, who are interested in extending Grafana itself to do things that are a bit more immersive. So we've been improving the tools you can use to create apps. So first, apps are better integrated into Grafana. You've got access to services like navigation, search, and RBAC. So you can help users discover and sort of use those apps as features in Grafana. Second, you can mix and match pre-built components from our design system or from scenes, which Mihaela was just talking about. And then last, we've invested in a much better dev experience as well. So better documentation. You can check out a lot of the demos and learn how to scaffold a plugin with just one command at grafana.com/developers. So yeah, and thanks to everybody who's been building apps as well. My friends at Volkov Labs, in front row. And the Logs app that we just demoed is also an app running on Grafana. There's a lot of detail here that we don't have time for, so I'd refer you to Ryan and Stephanie's talk tomorrow as well. Mihaela to close us out.
Thank you. So we've shown you a bunch of examples of improvements that we've made in monitoring with Grafana, managing Grafana, and also extending it. And I wanted to mention that although we've used a bunch of cloud environments in the demos today, everything that we showed you works in both open source and cloud. And that includes the AI features that I teased. There is a talk focused on AI tomorrow as well, so if you're curious about that, please attend. I know Nathan's been prepping for it. But also, we also want you to get involved in all of this. So we want to invite you to go and download the Grafana 11 preview release and try it out, or go to cloud and try it out if you want. We also want you to go and read the What's New docs that are available on our website, and come talk to us at the Ask the Experts booth. We're obviously out of time, so we're not going to get any Q&A, but we're heading straight over there, so we'll be available if you want to chat. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.